right, and welcome to another Friday Habit episode. Hey, we got a treat for you today. If you have ever thought about writing a book or having a book written for you, we have an awesome entrepreneur on the show that has a few companies that do both those things, that help you in both those things. So we have Barbara Richter on the podcast today. She's the founder of DIY Books and In Ink Ghostwriting. Her companies have provided tools and resources for individuals to craft their stories, their life stories, or business narratives. And also, she has one of the most premier ghostwriting firms in NYC, serving a global audience of clientele, NFL players, Fortune 500 CEOs, artists, musicians, doctors, I mean, anything really. And the firm offers a wide array of writing services from business book, memoirs, and novels. So, Barbara, welcome to the Friday Habit.
Boy, that's a heck of an introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. How are things going in NYC?
It's raining really hard right now.
Okay.
So I apologize if you get that in the background, but it's coming down just all of a
really?
sudden.
Okay. That's good. How close are you to the city? I mean, do you get out of the city much, or are you
I'm actually right outside the city. I'm in Westchester County.
Okay.
So maybe 15 miles, super easy to get into.
Okay, you hop on a train or something like that to get
super
to the
easy.
middle of it. Awesome.
Yep.
That's great. And then what's life like? You have a family, what's that?
I'm surprised you don't see them right now. I usually have 2 basset hounds who are flanking me.
Okay. Okay, nice.
I live in Westchester. I have a husband and a daughter who's 15.
Okay.
And my business, which is like my 3rd, 4th, 5th baby.
Oh, I get that. How's the 15-year-old? I have a 16-year-old. I got a 16-year-old, 13-year-old, and 11-year-old.
Oh boy, that's
and
a
so
busy house.
I'm in the thick of it. Yeah. Is your daughter a sophomore, going to be a junior, or?
She's a freshman. She's an old freshman.
Okay.
So she was born at the beginning of the year. So she's older than everybody else. And she's already started practicing to drive a little bit, which is not good for me.
It's scary.
I'm sure you have a 16-year-old.
Oh yeah, he's already like full swing. He's got his license, his car, he's driving. So it was really stressful too, because he also wanted a truck that was manual. And so we had to teach him how to drive stick,
Did you know how to drive stick?
Yes. Do you know how to drive stick?
No.
Come on, what was your first car?
Oh my goodness, my first car was like a Volvo. I mean, it wasn't even my car, but it was like a turbo. The most it had was like a little turbo button. You could go a little faster.
Yeah, my first car was like a 1981 Toyota Corolla,
classic.
And it was manual. And I had a buddy of mine teach me. I bought the car for like $700, and then I had him teach me outside of work how to drive stick, because I didn't know how to do it. So, but it's kind of like riding a bike. Like once you learn it, it all comes back to you. So
that's what everyone says. So
it's like a good apocalyptic skill to have. If you hop in a truck or some sort of vehicle that is manual, then you could get in and drive away.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Although I happen to think that Toyotas are kind of like they are the apocalypse vehicle. You always see them in apocalypse movies. They're the last one standing, and just in my experience, having had a couple, they run forever without fenders, without hubcaps. I mean,
yes,
really put them through the ringer.
I know. I'm a huge fan. I drive Lexuses because they're Toyota-based engines, and then my son got a 1999 Toyota Tacoma.
Ooh!
So,
wow, that's a nice truck.
Yeah, it's vintage. It's
Doesn't it make you feel old? 99 makes you feel vintage. I mean,
yeah. When did you graduate high school?
99.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. Yeah, I graduated in 99, so then it's like, oh wow, this car was made when I graduated high school,
Yeah.
But I've also been married for 20 years now, so
Congratulations, that's very exciting.
Yes, it's a feat. I always tell people it is the hardest thing, but also the most rewarding. Same thing with kids too. It's very difficult, but also extremely rewarding, and gives so much purpose to life. So
right.
I'm
true.
a big
It's never static. You got to keep working at it.
Yeah, exactly. So did you grow up in New York, and were you a creative? Tell me a little bit about your journey to entrepreneurship and getting into helping people write books and writing books.
Well, okay. So I'm actually from Massachusetts. So I'm from Worcester, Mass.
Okay.
I'll hide the accent for you. I'll spare you.
My daughter has a little bit of a speech impediment, and people think she's from Boston. You
That's
know?
so funny. That's
Yeah,
so funny.
it's really cute. She's 11, and it's just kind of like, oh, it's go park your car,
She has a career in acting ahead of her. And all the actors who like can't nail the accent, except she'll actually get it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so funny. It comes out when I get tired or my so I'm neither of those right now, which is great.
Yeah, all right, good, yeah.
But so I grew up outside Worcester, Massachusetts. I grew up in a house full of books. My father is an author, a nonfiction author. He's actually working on book number 11 right now.
Oh, really? Wow. Has he written anything we would know?
His first book was called A Gentle Madness,
Okay.
The Eternal Passion for Books, Bibliophiles, Bibliomanes, and the Eternal Passion for Books is the first subtitle. It was a finalist for the National Book Award in 1995.
Let's go.
So if you're into books, book culture, book people,
Yeah.
that's the seminal book. I actually remember when I was in college, I had to read it. Of course I took. It's like, oh, I remember this. This is crazy. So, but if you're into nonfiction, book people, his most recent book was actually a biography on Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and his wife, which was beautiful. It was like the side that we don't know. We know the bearded poet, but we don't know about the young Enrique who went to Spain and fell in love. So that was that book. Anyway, so that was my dad, but that has to do with what we're talking about because before that he was a book reviewer. So of course, book reviewers get lots of books. So our house
It's just books everywhere.
everywhere, every day it felt like my birthday because everything came in and they reviewed adult books, children's books, everything in between. So we read.
It was like Amazon before Amazon. You'd go to your front door and there was like a package of books there.
Yeah, and this was back in the day when publishers, when they were sending out review copies, they also sent a ton of swag. So we would get postcards and we would get bags and T-shirts and all sorts of just stuffy toys, like all sorts of things. They do that still today with some very niche books, but not to the extent that they used to.
Yeah, I bet.
Which I understand. I mean, for various reasons, of course, budgets and,
Right.
and that. But so that was wonderful. So we grew up with that, and I went to college, and I thought I was going to. I didn't actually. You know what? I went to study French literature. I didn't study English. Everyone's like, "You're an English major." No, I studied French lit. That was like the one thing we didn't get in the house. My dad didn't read French. He didn't review French, but I fell in love with it in school. Studied it, went to grad school for it, taught it.
Okay.
And then I had a child, my daughter. And at the time, I didn't feel like I could do teaching and raise her well. I could do both, but pretty poorly.
Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. And I'd pick her up from daycare, and they'd be like, "Oh, she just woke up from a nap. She's ready for you." And I'd be like, "Oh, that's fabulous." Not that I didn't like hanging out with her, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're ready
The
to
intensity.
tone it down at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I left teaching, and I stayed home with her, and it was wonderful. But eventually, after a while, my brain started to, I hate to use the word atrophy, but it, kind of did. So I started writing children's books just because I'd seen so many of them. And I thought, why don't I try? So I wrote a couple, and I put together a book proposal, and sent them out to agents, and I got crickets, nothing, goose egg, rejection or nothing. And, but of course that is kind of the part of the
The
freelance
grind,
writer.
right? You
Yes.
gotta just keep it's getting your reps in.
Yes, it is exactly. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're a freelancer, or any of those things, you're just kind of used to hearing a lot of no or nothing. So
Yeah.
finally I got a response back from an agent who said, "This is cute, but nobody knows who you are." And so most people would hear that and say, "I should work on my profile and my social media presence." And I heard that and I said, well, I guess if it's good, but nobody knows who I am, I could help somebody who people know who they are, but maybe need some help with it. So that's how I got into ghostwriting. I put out a shingle, started getting some clients, and I haven't looked back. And during the pandemic, things really took off. We started hiring writers and graphic designers, and I just feel really fortunate that I'm able to help people tell their stories. And that gave birth to DIY Book, which is the other company, because good ghostwriting is not cheap. I think it's a fair price.
Yeah.
There's plenty of fly-by-nighters and there's plenty of scams out there, but
Yeah.
good ghostwriting, it's not something that you can do right out of college. It takes time,
Yeah.
it's all of those things. And I would have to turn people away because they had great stories, but they couldn't afford it. So
Right.
I decided there was got to be a way to help them. So I tried to democratize the ghostwriting process by breaking down the writing process into discrete steps that anybody, even if you don't think you're a writer, could follow and come up with a book. And it's really exciting now because now there's AI.
Yeah.
And that has implications, which I mean, if you want to, we can talk about. When we
Yeah, I would
launched in
love to.
2023, it was like
Yeah.
it's right before actually
Right.
May, and it came out in November.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, what is this? So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother element that I think is helping people write, but it's a tool. It's not a replacement.
Right.
And I think it's important to remember. And that's kind of where I am today. I host a
Yeah.
podcast too, so
Nice.
about writing.
That's awesome. So when you were deciding to start your second company, DIY, what was that like as far as making the leap of doing that? Was it something where you had a business plan put together and you'd kind of decided, like, all right, I'm going to launch this thing, or did it just kind of organically start to happen, or like people you couldn't afford your services for ghostwriting, you just kind of pushed off to, here's a PDF with some stuff on how to do it. Like what was that process of kind of starting your own business? And now obviously it's growing, so you're like hiring contractors and doing X, Y, and Z to get things
Right.
moving forward.
So initially it was just, usually when I would tell people like what's involved with traditional ghostwriting, they would hang up, they would get angry. Some would get angry, some would get sad. And I felt really, bad because I didn't have anything else to offer them. So that was like the first step. And then I thought about it for a little while. I said, why can't I offer them something? So that's when I went and I put together a business plan. So I didn't have something in the interim where it was like, let me put together a list of things for you that you can do. It was something that I was doing. I wanted it to be presentable. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that's the writer in me, is I don't want to give somebody something that's probably a work in progress or that I'm going
Right.
to test out. Although, of course, when you're a business owner, there is that beta test moment where you are looking for that feedback, but it was still too early. So I put together a business plan on how we wanted the site to work, what we expected the user experience to be like, what the end result was going to be, and the sort of the pain points that we were going to address for authors, which was price and which was ease of use and accessibility. One part of the writing process that a lot of folks don't think about, especially in this age of like self-publishing, or if you're writing a book for your family and you're just making a presentation copy of your life story, is the actual formatting and printing. And if any of your listeners out there have ever tried to upload a book to print, if it's not within the correct formatting,
Oh, geez, yeah.
it's
It's a whole nother,
frustrating.
yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be a
It's
designer.
You do and you don't. You have to really focus on what their margins are, what their bleed area is, which is where ink may not go. You don't really want your images to go past that, so it'll get cut. All sorts of things. So I said we should be able to take that pain point away for authors, and that took about a year to put together, and then we launched, and we're still tinkering with it.
Yeah, how's it going so far?
Kind of getting the word out is the hard part, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's been a challenge for me getting out from behind the screen. As a writer, I'm used to, either talking with my ghostwriting clients or just typing. And so now it's, well, Barb, you got to be the face of the company. And that's been an adjustment.
Yeah, hence the podcasting, getting out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Getting out there, telling people how they can write their story, why they should trust us, all of that stuff that goes into launching a business. So that's been exciting.
Have you ever taken the Enneagram personality test at all? Have you heard of that before? Oh,
I've heard of it, but my husband took it and he got like general or something like that.
Okay.
I think I might be, maybe I'm talking about a different test, but it's like it describes your personality in different.
There's like 9 different personality types, and you take the test, and then you kind of qualify within one of these 9 personality types and stuff like that. So
I
you
should
should
go do
definitely
that.
take it. When you understand yourself better, then you can like work towards your strengths, in certain areas, and then figure out how to be the best version of yourself in those different situations, and whatnot. Because
sounds much more useful than kind of this baptismal by fire, by realizing that I'm not a natural like host, I guess is the word. I'm more natural.
Oh, whatever. Well, listen, you're doing great, you know.
Well, thank you.
And you're a storyteller, right? So there's an
Yeah.
element of you're able to kind of put yourself in other people's shoes and then tell stories, you know.
Yeah, but when you're writing, you have the opportunity to revise. When you're speaking on the fly, you can't be like, oh, let me take that back and edit it and then say it again. Like it's out there, it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
internet,
Well, that's when
always
that's where you just have to just be okay with yourself and love who you are at that point.
Exactly.
So it's hard for everybody. I always tell, you know, because being on camera and putting out video is really a great way to grow your business, for people to get a sense of who you are. But nobody likes being on camera. Nobody likes seeing themselves or hearing themselves. And it's one of those things where you just have to get over it and just be okay with your flaws and just allow people to like you for who you are. So
Exactly. And don't get too crazy with the filters because that doesn't look good either.
no, that's the worst, you know, especially you have a lot of, I feel bad because in the real estate space, I feel like that person's holding on to their headshot from like 15, 20 years ago. And then you see them in person and you're like, oh, wow, your photo on your website was way different.
It's funny you should say that. My headshot on my website, I'm blonde, which a little out of date. So I think I
Come on, you need to update your headshot. Let's go.
So. Well, it was only a year ago, but still.
Were you the person always like dyeing your hair and things like that when you were in high school?
Dyeing it, shaving it, doing all sorts of crazy stuff to it. It's still, I'm trying to be good about it now. But when my daughter was like, I'm going to cut it and dye it blue, I was like, okay, we'll go back.
Yeah, I know. I can't. It's one of the things. Especially when you have teenagers, right? It's one of those things where it's like you're way more protective, and then you kind of start to see why your parents did certain things or didn't allow certain things because now you're becoming your parents, you know. And then I just try to remind myself, like, you know what? I had my tongue pierced and bleached tips, and I turned out okay. You know,
Fine.
It's like if my kid wants to wear some Jinkos and get a mullet, like. It's just a phase, and we'll have great photos to make fun of them about.
You really will.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I feel like writing a book is one of those things that a lot of people want to do. I mean, it's something I've thought about doing for years and years and years. I have a fantastical story, and every time I share it with somebody, they're like, "Oh, you need to write a book." And so I can see the value, very similar. I'm always selling podcasting because I'm like, podcasting is a great way for someone to build authority, be a thought leader in their space, and create content on a consistent basis. And I feel like a book is very similar to that in the sense of it helps you be an authority figure in your space. It presents you as a thought leader. And especially if you want to be a speaker or somebody who's getting paid to consult or whatever that might be, having a book seems to be one of those things that could really boost your presence and instantly give you credibility when you go to work with a particular client, or if you're trying to get on a speaking circuit. Like having a book gives you that instant credibility. Is that something that you've seen, that people who are coming to you to maybe that they have an idea, they want to get started? And I kind of want to talk about both sides of things because I think that the DIY part of like capturing your family's legacy is very interesting too. But as far as being a speaker or being an author, thought leader, books seem to be a great way that instantly speaks that credibility to people.
Absolutely. Well, so you kind of went through my talking points on why a business book is really great for entrepreneurs, but you're right, it increases your networking opportunities. If you have a business book, you're going to connect with other professionals, with other industry leaders, with other collaborators. If you're kind of all at the same level as an entrepreneur, you have a book and your competitor doesn't, you've just immediately elevated yourself.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to seek you out, like you said, because you're the authority. If you write a book as opposed to just an ebook, there's nothing wrong with ebooks. I think they're wonderful as lead gen. You know, if you put them up on your website and, exchange email addresses for the ebook, they're great. But if you have a physical book, and the nice thing about if you're doing independent publishing or you're creating your own imprint these days, You can select how many copies you have. You don't have to have like a warehouse full of books sitting someplace gathering dust. And having that, and you go to events and you give that out, that's a really neat calling card.
Yeah.
It's different. It's not going to get lost. Well, I guess now these days people just tap LinkedIn and that's that. But
Right.
but they'll remember you. And also, as opposed to an ebook, you can generally churn out a couple thousand words. Of course, I say this just kind of doing that.
As a writer, yeah, it's easy to crank out a couple thousand words.
Well, it is, and I think it's gotten easier, especially with all these tools, which again we can talk about.
Yes.
But when you have a book, it's a little bit more of an endurance sport, if you will. You do have to plan it out a little bit more, and you've taken the time, and just the act of taking that time to put that book together shows your customers or your investors or whomever that you're serious about your product or your service. And actually, with DIY Book, because I think there are so many entrepreneurs who would benefit from writing a book, like if you're in the financial services industry or if you run a franchise, those sorts of things, you're a dentist. I want them to be able to write a book as well. So we actually have a business book offering, which breaks down the business book narrative. There is kind of a pattern to business books. What's the product or solution, product, problem, solution, who you are, and it's sprinkled in there. So unlike a life story, which is a little bit more individual, even though each entrepreneur and each business is different, there is an arc that you can follow. So we use that in that offering so that people can, if they want to, put a book together more reasonably than hiring a ghostwriter.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome and a great way to have a unique marketing piece.
Yeah.
Something that just is going to set you apart from somebody else. When you were starting kind of both your businesses, what were some of the, I guess, fears that you had, or did it kind of all just start kind of rolling? You said you kind of put your shingle out there, and then it was, I'm sure one book leads to another book, and it's just kind of that whole...
Yeah. So when I started,
word of mouth kind of exposure.
It is, especially with ghostwriting. In the beginning, it really was mostly word of mouth. So I put out my own shingle, and I also worked with another big name ghost on the East Coast for the beginning couple of years. So I learned a lot from that person. I also learned a lot of things that I thought I could do better. So that's when I really started promoting my own company. But it's hard when you have NDAs. You can't go out there and say, guess who I wrote this book for? Of course, I say that. And of course, you type ghostwriter into Google and it pops up right now. You have Joe Biden's ghostwriter. I think Trump's ghostwriter's been back in the news. Harry, Prince of Sussex, whatever, his ghostwriter. So it's not necessarily
wasn't
true.
there one of those things where someone got busted because like in their book they talked about I think this was maybe somebody in the Midwest or somebody who was running for Congress. I can't remember, but it was like they had said something in their book that they had worked with an organization or done something, and it really wasn't true.
That was, I think, there was Kristi Noem, who's the governor, right? And the whole dog thing, and
yes, I think that's
the
what
ghostwriter, and it's easy to blame somebody who can't talk back. But so generally, unless you have a provision in your contract that says you're allowed to disclose, or you're getting a co-credit, like a co-byline credit. So sometimes you'll look at a book and it'll have the big celeb name at the top. Underneath it'll have somebody else's name in much smaller font. They've negotiated that relationship. And there's quite a few ghosts who do that. I tend to work with folks who don't want that for various reasons, and I respect that. Of course, it can make the process of finding new clients more challenging, but generally, if you do a good job, it will share. It's like going to your plastic surgeon. Like, who'd you go see? Well, I went to go see this one. So,
exactly.
Same idea.
Yeah, I've worked with Laura Morton. I've had a client that, I don't know if you know who Laura Morton is, but she's written books for like Justin Bieber and a bunch of famous people, and I just always
Best-selling
thought, man,
New York Times author, yes.
yeah,
That's awesome.
So she's a pretty awesome lady, and then it just blows my mind, like what you do though. It to me is just like you must have a passion or love for writing, because obviously, if you didn't like writing, you'd really give up pretty quickly, because some of these books too that you can write could be pretty daunting, I'm sure too. It's like doing all the research and trying to take a few sentences that were given to you by your client and then expounding on it into a whole chapter.
Well, I could tell you some stories, but I won't. I mean, I remember I worked with some clients that every interview, it's just, I like to think of each ghostwriting endeavor as like a 9-month marriage, because you hear so much and then maybe 2/3 of it doesn't get used. But if you plan each endeavor correctly, if you put together a table of contents and you prep your client for what you're going to be talking about, it tends to go pretty smoothly. And even then, sometimes best laid plans don't work out, and you have to work around them. But I do love what I do. I'm very fortunate to say that I love what I do. But sometimes it's a slog like any other. I don't have the luxury of having writer's block. Because it's you're usually on deadline.
Right.
In addition to having ghostwriting clients, there's the the podcast, and there's the other company, and then there's stuff that I write under my own name. So there really is no time to sit and be like, I just want to do this today.
I don't feel like writing. It's like, no, I got to write 1,000 words today, and that's the goal.
And not just 1,000 words, but they got to be publishable. So you might write 2,000.
Right, and then the other 1,000 get trashed.
Yeah, or you save them. Nothing is ever wasted.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no.
Is that something?
You realize that.
Is that something that you? Because I grew up in the music industry, and it was one of those things where the guys who are really great songwriters, they were always writing music, right? Even it was just the goal was to write a song a day, because even if it's a crappy song, it helps you learn your craft better. It helps you grow as a writer. Is it similar in the writing world, where it's like you really need to be practicing your craft, and how do you grow as a writer?
Well, I can't speak for other writers, but I can certainly speak for myself.
Yeah.
So I do think that some sort of daily practice, whatever it is beneficial, because if you don't do it, you do get rusty after a while, I think. I haven't had the luxury of not doing it for a while, so I couldn't tell you. But at least in the ghostwriting space, part of the skill is that you have to assume the voice of your author, and that comes with active listening. And if the client has authorized you to do research, you're doing research, and nailing down tone or what the client wants in terms of tone. Like, you might have a client who wants to be funny or wants to be mildly sarcastic or loves Malcolm Gladwell and wants that as their inspiration. So all of these things that you have to take into consideration.
You're like a human AI.
Yeah.
It's like, I want you to write in the style of Malcolm Gladwell.
Hemingway.
Yeah.
That's a funny prompt, actually, if you put it into AI. Like, I want to write in the style of Ernest Hemingway, and it comes back and it's like, what is this? Anyway, that's a different topic.
Yeah.
But some days you don't want to do it, but you still have to do it. And so it's easier if you're doing it regularly. And also for people who are not professional writers but want to get into writing or enjoy the process, part of what makes, I think, a great writer is somebody who reads widely and varied genres. I'm looking at my desk right now. I've got a book in French. I've got a book of obituaries. I've poems and memoir. And these are just things that I'm reading either for my podcast or for pleasure or are informing something that I'm writing. All totally different, not all necessarily new. And I think that just helps kind of put stuff up here in the old the brain bank, because you can pull on all of these things. Nothing is ever, I think, ever wasted. And I find myself surprised. Sometimes I'll be writing a business book, but there's something that I remember from a piece of narrative nonfiction that I think not necessarily the content, but the form or the syntax would be appropriate. Yeah. So I find that to be
Do you
very useful.
read super fast?
Do I read super fast? I don't know if I read super fast. I do find if there's a book that I'm reading and I love it, I can't put it down. And that can be a detriment because I like to go to bed really early. And
you can't go to bed early if you're like reading. Yeah, I mean, I guess the downside though is like it's hard to consume like that much content. My wife has a friend that she's actually in a book club with, and she can speed read, so she can like essentially capture a page almost at a time, where she can like read a whole book within a couple hours, because it's just, and then she can retain all the information. So
that's amazing.
I'm like, man, that would be a really great skill to have because for me, I like listening to podcasts. I like, watching YouTube podcasts, things like that. But a lot of times I'll put them on 1.5 speed so that I can consume it quicker, because it's like, oh, this is a 45-minute thing. I don't have time. But if I speed it up, yeah, exactly, I can listen to it in half the time, So I do that a lot, but I could imagine there's probably just endless amounts of stuff that you want to read that you just don't have the time or bandwidth to consume.
It's true. I mean, and there's different types of reading. There's work reading, right? Like there's stuff that I've got to learn. There's stuff that I think might be helpful that's on my own. There's pleasure reading. There's, so I'm learning Icelandic for fun. So there's Icelandic homework.
Do you speak French too?
Yeah, no, I'm fluent French. I actually translated a book from French to English.
Oh, wow. So you're like
fun.
fluent. It sounds very nerdy of you, Barb.
It is. I completely embrace it, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's good. I translated this for fun. It's like, okay.
It's published. I published. Actually, I was with the publisher, and then I took back the rights, and I created my own imprint. I went through the whole process because I wanted to see what it was like.
That's cool. Yeah.
Because I feel like I have to practice what I preach sometimes with clients when I'm like, you should create an imprint. And so I did it. And it was not easy. It was doable, but it was like, there's a lot of steps. But I understand it a lot better now. So it was really informative in that regard.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the AI scene, because it does seem like AI is solving a lot of problems for a lot of people. Have you heard of Novel AI?
Novel AI? I have not heard of Novel AI.
Yeah, I think novelai.net is their website, but I think it can like...
I have. I just pulled... Yes. Okay, I didn't... Okay. The storyteller. That's
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems... I have an uncle he's been working on this book for years, and it's a... suspense thriller novel, whatever, and he's semi-retired, so he's been spending time, but he always just gets stuck on writing. And so I was like, hey, you should check out this, because it could almost be like a writing partner with you, where you can feed it a bunch of the stuff that you already have written, and then you can help it come up with new ideas, or it can help you come up with new ideas and things like that. So what is your whole thought on the AI? Are you kind of incorporating that into some of your new stuff? Because it seems like it would be very helpful to have prompts and other types of things that could walk you through a journey of helping you write your book.
Absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, it is a technology that is here. I mean, whether it's here because people stole whether like ChatGPT stole property from writers, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do have to, full disclosure, my father is involved in a lawsuit against Microsoft. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay. That was one of the things that I was thinking about when this whole thing started, is like, technically nothing generated by AI is unique or new, right? All it has done is learned what has already been created, and then jumbles that up into a soup, and then barfs it out in a cohesive manner. And so for me, the fear that I have about AI is that at what point will it break? Because at some point, all it's going to be doing is learning off of the regurgitated thing that it learned from actual creatives, And so I guess maybe that's the next element of AI, where AI could essentially be booted up, have no memory of anything, and then create its own thing.
Well, I think the way I understand, at least for like ChatGPT, like what it was trained on and what users use, that like these two modules, I guess, our brains like don't talk to each other. But sometimes they do. So sometimes you feel like, where did you get that information from? This, I don't know where I got it from. But if you ask it in a different way, it kind of tells you. So that aside, I don't know. I hope we don't get to that point where it's like independently creating thought. It would be nice though if like these companies gave their authors and writers and all of the sources credit. I think it's interesting, for example, like OpenAI entered into a relationship or a licensing agreement relationship with I think it was AP to license all of their news stories. Yeah. And that was, I think, in the last 6 months. So that to me suggests that they recognize that you need to pay for what you're using.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. But what do you feel about as far as the creativity of it, or using it as a tool to help you write? In some ways, there's an element where there's not going to... I feel like people are getting lazy essentially. Like they're going to ChatGPT, they're just being like, do this work for me, and then I'll clean it up a little bit and then just use that. It takes it off the. It's like my kids, right? They got all these devices. They never want to go out and play. When I was a kid, I was outside from dusk till dawn. I didn't have a cell phone, anything like. No one cared if I was in a ditch somewhere. I was just out playing, having a good time, and I always came home before it got dark and had dinner. Now it's like my kids; they don't ever get bored. They're always trying to be on a device or watch a show or watch a movie. They never just want to be bored.
Right.
But I feel like boredom actually helps you be creative, right? It helps you solve your problems. It helps you find out ways to be unbored. And so I feel like with AI, is there an element of it stopping you from being bored or stopping you from really thinking hard about a particular thing to try to come up with something better?
I think it can. So I think obviously this is a huge question. I mean, of course, you have that one component of should kids be using it or should schools be teaching kids how to use it because it's not going anywhere. I kind of lean in the camp of, there are some AI where it's just based on what students are using, like on their textbooks. So it's working as kind of a study guide helper. Although the flip side of that is, well, you're supposed to be the one learning how to create a study guide and creating your own outline because you need to grow your brain. So
it's like they got rid of cursive, and I'm like, hey, cursive is good for your brain. It's like a creative part of your brain that's helping you,
This muscle right here between your thumb and your, I guess, what is this, your pointer finger? And there's studies that have been done that show that this has atrophied. And I remember when I was teaching way long time ago, people were already saying because we type so much, we don't write as much. And I would have students do in-class essays. Not really, I mean, to work on French and whatever, but also to work on that muscle. And I remember kids would be like, this hurts. So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, poor thing. But with AI now, of course, I have kind of a side story, but I think it's related. I used to get calls all the time from students who would say, oh, I have paper due tomorrow. Can you help me with it? And I would say no, and goodbye, and go figure it out, and go take the D or whatever. As soon as ChatGPT came out, those calls stopped. So kids are using it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I use ChatGPT to help me.
You're right. And so the thing with it's a tool. Like, I think if you don't want to use it, don't use it. Like, nobody's going to penalize you because you're not like amplifying your voice and doing SEO best practices by using like an AI. Like, it doesn't matter. If you do use it, and if you do use it, the trick is like if you're a life story writer, for example, AI doesn't know you. It doesn't know your memories. Thank God it's not in our heads yet. It can't read our minds. So just going to an LLM and say, tell me about this day in Paris when I met my future husband, it's not going to help you.
Right.
That said, there are ways to, I think, use it. There are prompts. Actually, I'm putting together a series of prompts now that I'm going to put up on DIY Book to help people who are working on their life stories prompt an LLM appropriately so that it's not doing the work for you, but it's kind of giving you the little nudge. It's acting more as an editor, or, if you're in an office and you used to go to the water cooler, as they used to say, and you're workshopping something. So it's taking the role of more of an assistant. But that said, I find for myself, when I'm writing and if I'm really stuck, I have a bunch of these, and for whatever reason, the act of physically writing, I know I sound super old, but writing it with a pencil on a piece of paper, and I'm just away from my screen and I'm writing, even if I don't use all of these words, it makes me think about what I'm writing. And that's something that I think really AI can't do for you. Like, it's not going to help you think. It might help you work through a problem. It might help you work through if you're facing writer's block and give you ideas. But it's not going to be a replacement for any of that kind of original thought, at least not right now. That could change.
Once Elon Musk gets that Neuralink connect to your brain, and then you can just start sending your thoughts into it.
Yay. But if you're a writer, and if you want to actually write and that's kind of who DIY Book is catering to. It's like kind of the empty nesters, or, well, for the life story part, grandparents.
Yeah.
You enjoy this act. It's an activity. It's enjoyable, and you don't necessarily want to incorporate AI. So there are those people who just want nothing to do with it. But then there's other folks who want to do the activity but are getting stuck. So I think if they're getting stuck, and this is a service that could be of value to them, they should learn how to use it appropriately. Because, I think something that a lot of, at least students, seem to be running into is that they just go type the question in, they get the response, they cut and paste, and there you go. And as you know, LLMs can hallucinate, they can lie, and there's this like flattening of the language. Even if you try to put a prompt in that says, write in the style of, whomever, it's a style that if you see enough of it, and I've been playing around with it enough because I've been working on reviews of these different sites as well. You all kind of sound the same after a while.
Yeah.
And so you lose that voice. But if you don't know what your voice is, the humanness, yes, you lose the humanness. Yeah. I was playing around with one today because I'm working on a review, and it was what was the prompt I used? It was make it sound human, and but it came back with this. It was stripping away transition words. So all I had were just like short, declarative, active sentences. What is this? This is just like for a second grader learning how to read.
Right.
But it was informative because it's not smart. It's artificial, but it's not intelligent. It's what you put in is what it's going to come out with. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's
where
I'm at with AI.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. We've had a few other conversations on the show with other people about it, and it's definitely it's already, I think, changed the way the world is working, and I think we're gonna look back and it'll be the hindsight is 2020 kind of thing.
It's
it'll
a
be
transitional
like Terminator,
moment.
Skynet,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
not yet.
And I think that not yet. Yeah, there definitely is a future where there's going to be robots and AI running them, but I don't think that the human experience will ever be replaced, or even they're talking about AI being a companion. And at some point, I think you'll get bored of having that conversation with an artificial intelligence. Like you'll want
somebody, right?
Yeah. And there's an element of highs and lows and goods and bads that accumulate into our human experience that really make life worthwhile. Like you can't have really awesome times if you haven't experienced really bad times.
No, for sure.
And I don't think an AI will be able to relate or share an experience because it won't have any of those.
No, it's whatever it's been programmed to respond to certain prompts, it's going to spit that back. So that can't really be replicated. I don't think. I agree with you. But for things like if you're doing a newsletter or you're doing a LinkedIn post, and you can program it to do those for you, and you can free your brain up for the really creative things, I think that's a huge efficiency. And why wouldn't you want to do that? Especially, of course, if you're a business person and you're doing 10,000 things. I think there can be use for it. But if you're looking for like a genuine connection, you got to look elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like I remember when Google really first started getting real popular. It was such a useful tool. Like I was able to do so much more research and find things. And
oh my God, you remember going to the library?
Yes, yeah, the Dewey Decimal System, and you're trying to find the right. And you're searching. Oh yes, or what are the little things where you put the newspaper on it and you could like magnify the micro? Yeah, exactly. And you're zooming through that, looking for an article from the 90s. So
still a good skill. I guess it's like learning manual because you never know.
Yes, yeah, you never know exactly. There's going to be some sort of EMP that's going to like disconnect all of anything electronic will be shut down, and then we'll need some of these old tools in order to operate.
Truly, all of this depends on having power.
Yeah,
I mean, what happens if the power
that's a big
goes
thing
out?
too. You're screwed. You know,
forget it. Chaos.
Yeah. So, well, listen, I've really enjoyed our conversation and hanging out with you and talking about this stuff. And I would love for any of our listeners out there who want to become a better writer, get better at writing. What is some advice that you would give them, or a good place for them to start as far as writing goes?
As far as writing, I would say sit down, start. It'll be junk at the beginning. But if you just start writing, whatever it is, I would say have the grace with yourself to know that it's okay because it's a draft. And the beautiful thing is that you can continually do revisions. Again, reading widely and reading what you love, of course, for inspiration. And I would say I find, and I think there are some studies that prove this, that when you're holding a physical book, there's parts of your brain, like gray matter, that light up because it's working harder than when you're reading on like a Kindle device. Although there's great applications for that, and if that's how you read, then that's how you read. But there's this tactile element. Everything is kind of connected in our wonderful human bodies, that when you're holding a book and the words are going up in your head, the neurons are firing. So that itself can really help stimulate the writing process. Joining a writing group is really helpful. Sometimes some people love it, some people hate it. And, I would just give it a shot and see how that works. I have a ton of writing tips on the DIY book website that are applicable whether you use the program or not. I have a podcast where we talk about writing and the writing challenges that people face. So, and I would say don't give up, because even when the going gets tough, and it will, because what I find with new writers or people who are starting a book for the first time, you're filled with, and I was working on a project today and it's new and I'm excited about it, but that adrenaline rush fades like with anything. And you got to be able to keep going when the adrenaline tanks. And so reminding yourself of why you're doing this or who you're doing this for can be very helpful. And also setting, if this is something that you're serious about, if you're writing a book for yourself or your business or whatever, setting a goal, a realistic goal, not like I'm going to finish this book in a month and it's 30,000 words. I'm going to finish this book in a year, and work backwards and then put it into your calendar like you would put anything else, will go a long way towards actually achieving success.
That's great. Where is a good place for people to connect with you and maybe have you ghostwrite a book, or maybe have you help them on the journey of doing it themselves?
Anyway,
where can people connect with you?
All the ways. So In Ink Ghostwriting is my website for ghostwriting services. And that's all like one word, In Ink Ghostwriting. Instagram handle's the same. DIY Book is the other company, and that's at DIYbook.us. Instagram is DIY Book HQ. And Writing for Immortality is Writing 4 Immortality, and that's my podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Friday Habit. And hey, thank you so much for listening to the Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, there you'll find show notes for this episode. You can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can get access to our download guide to help you spend more time working on your business instead of in your business. If you got questions for us, hit us up at hello@thefridayhabit.com. You can also leave us a voice memo or anything else you want to share with us that we can share on the show. And until next time, remember, live every day like it's Friday.